بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and welcome to Finding Me on the ITV networks. Today, a topic that is very close to my heart, and I'm sure that many of the viewers who have been following Finding Me will recognize why it is such an important subject. And I'm very, very honored. Truly today I'm blessed and I'm honored to have two beautiful, dynamic young ladies with me to share this particular conversation and to raise awareness. And I'm sure that after you listen to them, you will understand what it is that I'm talking about. To introduce the topic, I want to highlight something that Pervez, my cameraman, just brought to my attention a short while ago from watching a documentary on the Alps and the survival in the Alps. And in that, Pervez said that there was the nutcracker bird, who is one of the lone birds that you find in the Alps, was hunting for food. And there's only this one particular acorn that carries the seeds that the nutcracker can eat. And no matter how hard the snow is or how hard the soil is, that acorn falls and nothing breaks it except the nutcracker. He then takes out the seeds, and there's a few hundred seeds, and he puts them in different spaces all over the mountain, protecting his forage of food, and hopefully so that he can come back and get it. But the squirrels watch him. They watch him putting these seeds everywhere, and the minute he's gone, they go and help themselves to the point where he loses at least 3/4 of the seeds that is buried. And sadly, from the remaining quarter, that which is left for him, he forgets where he put vast amounts of those seeds. And as a result, because of the fact that he forgot where he put some of those seeds, new trees grow in the Alps. And this is from Allah's Qudrat. Also the goats that suddenly realized from the dam that was built, there was a particular substance that was of nourishment for them. And climbing the steep slopes, they would find a way to get to that point where the water would leak and that particular nourishment would come out from the side of the dam and go and sip from there. How is it that they know where to go, what to do? And it is only through the work that they do that nature continues to grow, the very nature that gives us life. And with that, I'd like to introduce my very special guest, Nabila Raja, who is a third-year student at the Veterinary Science Campus, Onderstepoort at the University of Pretoria, and Rasia Wazar, who is a second-year Veterinary Science student, Onderstepoort, University of Pretoria. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I'm excited to have the two of you, and of course two females in a profession that is basically largely unheard of in terms of the Indian community. Nabila, you know, there's a taboo in the Indian community. When you say that you're going into veterinary sciences, more specifically, they'll say, really? Why aren't you doing medicine, you know? Or why aren't you doing dentistry? Or why aren't you doing pharmacy? Why? Why veterinary sciences? Tell us about this and your experiences with it.
So I think, like the typical vet student, I've wanted to be a vet ever since I can remember. My mom says since I was 4. I don't know where I learned the word veterinarian from at that age. But yes, it is a taboo. It's changing slowly. I think that in our communities, we think that girls should maybe, and this is generally not everyone, that girls should pursue careers which are delicate and more appropriate for our gender. But I think there is a lot of delicacy in the veterinary science profession, because you need a certain level of compassion, of being nurturing, and that speaks to every single female quality. So I don't know how it's not appropriate or anything like that. And just whether you're male or female, as caretakers of Allah's creation, what better way to do it?
Of course, certainly. And it's not only about being a caretaker, but it's also about healing, isn't it, Rasia?
Definitely. I went into the field because I wanted to help animals that can't help themselves. So in the medical field, like, humans know that they need help. They find the help that they need. Animals are helpless. They are Allah's creation, and we need to do our duty.
Giving them a voice, right? And did you find that it was a challenge when you spoke about being a veterinary scientist, you know, from your family or in the community at large?
My personal family were very encouraging of it because we animal people. But at the community at large, definitely everyone, the first comment I get is, but why didn't you do medicine? It's the same, like 6 years. And so I said, like, there's a difference. A lot of people are going to go towards the medical field and very few are going to go help the postdocs.
And also we have, you know, like with no offense or no disrespect to any other careers out there, each one is noble in its own right. It's just that we need to highlight the importance of the veterinary profession. It's very, very important.
And often animals get left behind because humans see them as lesser. So humans take preference in our communities especially.
I think the greatest problem, the reason you face this taboo is because maybe in our community and the Muslims at large, we've forgotten our own values and how important animals are. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of Ertuğrul, so I don't know if you've been watching the series, the Turkish series, right? Where Ertuğrul, who is the father of Osman Gazi, who becomes the first Ottoman leader. And in there throughout, I've been struck by the creativeness of the director to make sure that nature, animals, the environment is constantly an important theme if you pay attention to the series. And if you see Ertuğrul's love for his horse Aktogul and the child growing up with this understanding and appreciation of how to treat the animal and how to be one with the animal. And the same throughout where Ibn Arabi speaks about water and the flowing of water and water gives life. All of this is important aspects and values that we as Muslims should incorporate. So it's not only nature, it's not only water, it's not only the environment and not only human beings, it's all together that makes us who we are. Nabila, do you find that as a result of this, maybe this gap in our understanding and our ethical understanding of life, that veterinary sciences then becomes almost like a taboo career?
Most definitely. I resonate exactly with what you're saying because like Rasia was saying earlier and you were saying, with the medical and the veterinary profession, it's almost too impersonal.
Yes.
That connection we should have with animals, we share it with people because she's a person, I'm a person, you're a person. We have that in common. With animals, what do we have in common? There's that immediate barrier between us and them, and then because we're not taught...
Sorry, I just want to interrupt you then. Is it almost as if I own you? You belong to me.
The thing is, they don't belong to us. We are merely caretakers of them, and we've been entrusted with a certain duty, and we should live up to that. So it's the same way that, like, if you want your child to learn, or younger sibling, the value of money, you give them an allowance and they manage it, they budget for themselves. So why not teach them the value of animals? Get a pet in the house, or just take them to the SPCA and learn that these are lives too. Let them learn the value, because it's not just the value of a house or value of a car or value of something material like that. It's the value of a life, regardless of whether it's human or animal.
Rasia, do you find that we are failing in our duties when it comes to the older generation and the younger people in terms of interacting with animals? Like recently we had in our community, there was supposed to be a day where they were going to paint a pony, as part of a fundraiser. And that, for me, struck me as a moment of total disregard, denigrating something that Allah has created. It's a majestic being. An animal, a horse, is a majestic being and should be recognized and not as a toy or a means of entertainment.
I agree. I do feel as a community we are neglecting our duties in that sense. We need to, as the older generation, we need to encourage interaction with animals from young. Like Nabila was saying, we need to introduce, pet shouldn't be something that's unheard of the Prophet ﷺ himself had a pet, Muiza, a cat, that was so dear to his heart, and we need to integrate that into our society. It needs to be okay. Animals are often seen as something that's just not a part of our lives, and they should be, because Allah created them. At the end of the day, they are Allah's creation.
So the first thing that we should learn is respect, right?
100%.
But then, Nabila, today people can't respect each other. And so the struggle is, if you can't respect each other and you can't respect somebody slightly different to you, how then do you respect an animal? And even, does such a thought even occur to people, like to us? Does it occur to us that, animals are deserving of respect?
It boils down at the end of the day to how we are raised and what we take from our homes outside, and basic dawah. That's it. Because if, like you say, if we can't respect ourselves, how are we supposed to respect these animals that we are now trying to instill this connection with, you know, in our youth and even with an older generation? And yeah, like if you just think about it logically. If somebody cannot understand this, put it on paper and be like, would you like that being done to you? Yes or no? No, done. You know, there's no other way to, there's no need to have a 10-minute long PowerPoint presentation or a discussion about this. It's a simple answer. And what is a little bit aggravating sometimes is we are very selective in what we want to show in our deen, in our faith. And I'm saying this as a very incomplete Muslim, a very imperfect Muslim, that we can't choose what we want to perpetuate, what we want to show the world about Islam. Show everything about Islam, because we have nothing to hide. But also in that sense, like, be proud. Then learn about what you're supposed to do as well.
In its entirety.
In its entirety, especially when it comes to respecting animals.
Rasia, do you find that there's a huge challenge being a Muslim and being on the campus, veterinary sciences, and dealing with the diverse kind of encounters that you will deal with? And we're going to come back to that in the next segment, but I mean, certainly in terms of challenges, are there a lot?
Initially, when I only got to Undersupport this year, Nabila would have more experience about that, but when I got there this year, there was the development of a prayer room. So that helped in terms of having long days on campus and practicals that only end at 5 o'clock. So missing Zohar Salah and that. So now that is a lot easier for us in terms of that. And in terms of diversity, it's a lot of different people from different walks of life, different religions, and it takes a bit of getting used to. Like Nabila was saying with her hijab on campus, it provokes questions, and
one of the most conservative campuses.
You know, we have
right?
about 1,500 in the entire faculty of veterinary science, and I stand to be corrected with the number. It's just a ballpark figure. And in previous times, the proportion of Muslims within that number was 25 to 30 across all the years. Okay, so a lot of people till today will say, oh, you have a scarf, but where's your dot? And you're like, no, that's not how it works. Those are two separate things. Or I know that a friend of mine heard as well when somebody asked me if the scarf is the same as a balaclava, and you're like, really, are we going to go there now? People ask me if I'm going to be forced to marry my cousin or something, you know. So it's just, there's a lot of ignorance. A lot of ignorance and
stereotypes that need to be overcome by education.
Simply education. In my first year at Undersupport, I never, I think, spoke about this except to my mom. But when I arrived, I had moved from the Middle East to South Africa after living overseas for a few years. So it was a culture shock coming back to my own culture, because as time goes, this culture changes as well. And I literally got called some derogatory name by a final year sitting on one of the balconies, Afrikaans guy, and it took everything in me to still continue with my orientation week. And I couldn't tell anybody that, and because it just felt so shameful and so embarrassing for me. How am I supposed to deal with that? And because, you know, the Muslim population hadn't grown to what it is right now, who is going to be there to support me? My parents, my mom is overseas, my father's in a different city. Who's going to listen to me? And you feel very isolated, very alone, and it takes a lot of strength to stick to what you believe in.
Okay, so I'd like you to hold on to those thoughts. We're going to a break, and when we come back, I want to raise something about the hijab that you spoke about. We'll see you after the break.
بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the second segment of Finding Me on the ITV networks today with my two beautiful guests, and that is Nabila Raja and Rasia Waza. Both of them are students at the Veterinary Science campus, and yes, you heard me correctly, they are studying veterinary sciences, and that is studying about and of animals. And before we went into the break, Nabila, you spoke about the hijab and these derogatory statements, but of course there's another aspect of the hijab that comes very much to the fore recently in terms of Muslim women, and that is, is it allowed? Have you faced any difficulty about covering your hair studying in this particular profession? Of course, we know that surgeons, when they go into the theatre, nurses, they cover their hair, but it's so ironic that suddenly when a woman does it, normal place, it's problematic, but yet it's considered the most effective means when you're seeking absolute hygiene. So, but have you faced any difficulty like that?
No, not at all. I think it's just understanding from my peers, my colleagues. Staff are very understanding. I think they're also being trained in terms of transformation and the change in the demographic of the students that are being taken into the Faculty of Veterinary Science now. They have to understand, or else I think working there is going to be incredibly difficult for them. But they're very understanding, very supportive. If I may say, the only thing that makes it hard is the weather because Pretoria North is very hot and we don't have much shade. But other than that, I haven't faced any difficulty.
Alhamdulillah. I think Razia, in that way it speaks to a lot about the tolerance from other individuals, other faiths, other people, which is something that Muslims can learn, by looking at their behavior. We as Muslims can learn about tolerance from them, don't you think so?
So there's a big demographic of different religions, different cultures and backgrounds at Onderstpoort, and a lot of the time we are forced to work in different groups that we don't actually choose. So that gives us an understanding. It forces us to work with other people, other walks of life, and that allows us to integrate as a society, as a community. And because Onderstpoort is so small, it allows us to get united.
Yeah, so it's a good learning experience.
Yeah, and the other thing is, for as much as we say that they are very conservative and sometimes very close-minded students there, they are extremely supportive students as well. Like my closest group of friends on campus are not Muslims, and they are the ones that support me and wearing my scarf and things like that, maintaining a hijab. They are the most supportive people that I know.
So coming with the Muslim identity, and I want both of you to give me your thoughts on this. I remember a while ago there was a paper that was released from the University of Pretoria, maybe from animal sciences, not necessarily from veterinary sciences, but this particular professor wrote about the benefits of halal slaughter. So as of going into veterinary sciences, into this particular profession, besides just being taught about the medical science or the healing, treating of animals, there's an ethical component as well that you have to consider. So in your teaching, in the lectures, the classes that you encounter, is there a discussion of the different ways in which animals are treated by different communities, the cultures response, different cultures have a different response and a take on animals? Perhaps you would like to start, Razia.
We do learn about the different ways animals are treated. So we learn a lot about cattle, and in order for different cattle are used for different purposes. So different communities use different cows, different things in terms of what they want to do with it. So we do learn, like the more traditional communities go for slaughter, the more commercial farming methods use, like stunning and...
But Nabila, is there then ever a discussion that has entered the classroom about halal?
Actually, not that, in my few years of being at Onderstpoort, we have never engaged in that kind of discussion. I think it's very important, maybe in the following years. And I think when we do our clinics rotations and we do rural clinics visits and even, more commercial visits, that may come up in discussion, depending on where we visit, and as well as when we, like Razia alluded to, when we are doing group work or even in our rotation groups, if you're placed into groups with people that are not from your culture, it provides a good platform to say, hey, I know we're doing this right now, but in our culture, this is how it works. And it's a good thing, because even if I don't know all the benefits of halal slaughter, then that gives me the chance to say, hey, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me go back and research, and next week or tomorrow when we get back together, we can continue this discussion.
So as a health practitioner for animals, how does halal figure into your ethical understanding of respect for the animal?
I think that what we don't realize, and what is actually really beautiful, is halal, the concept of halal, what is permissible, fits completely into what we learn about at vet school. we learn about the ethical and humane treatment and care for animals, and halal is exactly that. A lot of people think that halal is, you know, a lot of non-Muslim people as well, the way that we summarize it for them is when you go to the abattoir, you say a prayer and you cut the sheep or the goat or the cow or whatever, and it bleeds out, and that's pretty much it. So if it's not prayed on, it's not halal. And then they're like, oh, okay. But halal extends beyond that. Halal is from birth back to slaughter, the correct rearing of this animal, you know. How much stress did you put it under? Were you kind to it? Were you cruel to it? You know,
the entire interaction.
It's so true. And you know that before you slaughter, you should take that animal away from the other ones. Put it in a peaceful environment. Give it a little bit of water, you know, shade, things like that. Make the going easy. None of this, I've been to a few grounds where they have those huge marquees, and it's almost like another Sultan Bahu fete, where we have, no it is, and you just have all these kids like, that's my sheep. And I understand you're trying to instill this tradition of going for qurbani or slaughter to the kids, but you have to do it correctly. For every minute, every second that these kids are chasing after the sheep, trying to catch his or hers that my father bought for me or I bought this, you know, you also stressing those sheep out, and this is their last few minutes of life. You know, again, it comes back to that respect question, like, would you enjoy that if that happened to you?
And I think that's the basis of Islam, mercy and kindness.
Yes.
And we have to relay that towards everyone, human beings and animals. So I think that's why Islam has the teachings of slaughter, because we take the animal's welfare into consideration from the time they're born till the time they end. And I think that's important.
I think one thing also that we forget to think about is the idea of slaughter is not an easy thing to do. So in doing that, you are again reminding yourself of the value of that life that you are taking. That is the stress, the pain, the agony in that moment that this animal went through. Yes, from birth till now, you've given it the most comfortable life possible. But in this moment, you should feel for that animal that you are slaughtering and understand the value, because we go to the butcher, we buy whatever meat cut into so many pieces, and you know what? Again, impersonal. Again, that distance is increased. Not that you've slaughtered this animal, it went through suffering to sustain you. So respect it. You know, don't waste the food. Small things like that.
That's an important thing that kids should be taught, because often we don't really understand the teaching.
Rasia, it's not only kids, adults too, because if anybody wastes food, it's the adult, the habit of wasting food. And I mean, I'm glad you raised that particular point, because I mean, it never occurred to me that way, but as you were talking, I've been following this group on Twitter, and they, I can't remember what they are, but they're advocating for more vegan lifestyle, you know, and we can understand why, because if you look at it and you look at the lifestyle of the Prophet, they didn't consume as much meat as we are consuming. So we need to rethink all of this, but we're right at the end. We're coming back with a second interview. I'd just like you to give us a parting thought, please. Parting comment.
Oh, sorry. In general, veterinary science is an extremely noble profession. If you have a love and a passion for animals, think about it. Or just, even if that's not what you want to do full time, just make sure you give a little bit to human, animal and environment. We stress on that in university all the time. There's such an intricate connection between human, animal, environment, going both ways, 3 ways, 4 ways, every way. And, you know, do what little you can do. Increase your awareness, increase your knowledge, increase your everything, and just be kind. And like Rasia said, mercy and kindness, most important.
So I think in a community, you don't have to just be doing vet science in order to interact with animals. We need to do our part in terms of the environment. In our homes, we can start to recycle, do our part in terms of conserving our planet. And then also with animals, we need to take our kids to the SPCA to help them. We need to donate to charity organizations. And it's a very fulfilling degree, but you don't have to be doing this degree to help animals.
Yeah, you can just take out from your kids soft toys, blankets, etc. if you have
Exactly.
babies. Even
There's so many organizations that could use the money, could use the toys, the blankets. And I mean, we are so fortunate and blessed, alhamdulillah, to have an excess of things that we can take these things from our house and donate them.
No, Jazakallah, thanks. But I think I would like to leave a parting comment, is that do yourself a favor. If you live in an Indian area, and now I'm referring back to the apartheid concepts, go outside and look at your area. See how sad it is in terms of the nature, the gardens, the environment, the trees. Look at the dirt, the litter outside. Then go to another environment. Go to a better suburb. and look at the beautiful gardens, look at the trees, look at the parks, and really look around and see if it's litter-free or friendly. And then you will know where our shortcomings are. Fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في موت